Bridget Truxillo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, let's start out with where you got your interest in law enforcement from. Where did it all start?
Well, if anybody's ever heard me talk before, they're going to be tired of this joke. And it's not kind of sort of a joke that I joke and say that I watched G.I. Jane and I thought it was really cool. And I said I was going to shave my head. And no offense to any Navy SEALs out there, because even back then, this is dating myself. This is back when a woman would never have even been allowed to try out for Navy SEALs. I think you can now, though. Has that happened yet? Anyway, um, I thought G.I. Jane was cool, so I thought, oh, I'll do that. But really, that's a joke. So nobody in my family's ever been in law enforcement before,
Oh,
ever that
okay.
I'm aware of. I mean, my dad's family, he's first generation American. They immigrated from Sicily. I
Oh,
joke and
okay.
say that maybe I had some like relatives in the mob, so maybe that's as close as I got. But no, they thought I was nuts. I was about a month, I don't know, last semester, really close to graduating at the University of Florida. Um, in environmental horticulture, so I have a degree in plants.
Okay. What were you gonna
Um,
do with that? I don't understand.
well, I really
Work in a
didn't know. I
greenhouse
just needed to get
or
the I just really wanted to get the stupid degree and move
sure.
on. I enjoyed exercising, and
Okay.
when I was in my 20s and thought, well, I don't know if I'll always be motivated for this. I mean, now I'm in my late 40s and I know I'm still motivated to do it. So I can tell
Even
my
even more
20,
so. Yeah, it's more
yeah.
important now.
Yeah. And so back then I thought, well, I don't know, maybe I should get a job that requires me to be fit. So like I didn't want to do the military. Um, but I thought, maybe law enforcement. And then so my idea was to get maybe FBI, DEA, something federal. So I decided to go the local route to get there to get some experience to make me marketable. And also that I'm a super dork when it comes to like right and wrong, constitutional law. Like I really, I'm a, dorky American. I believe in our country, I think it's cool the way we set ourselves up, that we have this constitution that governs what we do and the separation of powers in our country. I mean, and I think, if you break the law, there's consequences and you should be held accountable for that. That's because that's how it keeps our country safe. So I liked that that I would be able to participate that in somehow. I'd never, I mean, and now I'm an attorney, never, well, when I went to college, the movie, what was that movie with Tom Cruise that he was the
A few
tax
good
attorney?
men.
No, when he was the tax attorney and they ended up running off to like the Cayman Islands to avoid
Oh, it was John Grisham.
the John Grisham. Yeah,
Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
yeah. I know what you're
Oh,
talking
it's
about. That
right
was
on
a
the tip of my
great movie.
tongue. I'm having an old lady moment. But anyway, that movie, I just read the book and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'll go be a tax attorney. And then I realized what that meant, because I was like, hey, most tax attorneys probably don't run off to the Cayman Islands and
No.
avoid. So then went to college, had no idea what I wanted to do. But anyway, if you had told me when I was graduating from the University of Florida that I would somehow become an attorney, I would have told you you're nuts. But I also like the idea of not having a job that was going to put me behind a desk every day. I just didn't see myself being a 9 to 5, punching the clock, hamster wheel kind of thing. So
Sure.
all those reasons, and I chose to do law enforcement. My family thought I was nuts, but getting a job and working hard, and off I went.
Yeah, that was my next question. What mom and dad say? It was like, hey, I'm gonna be a
Well,
cop.
yeah, he thought I was kind of nuts. And I said, oh, I think I want to do FBI or something. And then I was like, well, I'm going to do the sheriff's office to get there. He definitely thought I was nuts when I went to the undercover narcotics unit. And then definitely thought I was nuts when I called to tell him I'd tried out for a SWAT team. So he was not happy about that.
Okay. What'd your mom say?
Not really. My mom probably was like, "Oh, Bridget," but she didn't say much. I mean, I can remember where I was sitting in my house at the time. I called my dad and said, "Dad, you're never gonna believe what I did today." He's like, "What, honey?" I said, "Well, I tried out for SWAT team," and I totally thought he was gonna say something like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! I'm so proud of you." But no, his response was, "Oh, Bridget, isn't it bad enough that you're on the narcotics unit, that you do narcotics or whatever he said?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" It never even occurred to me that, when you're young and dumb and you think like, yeah, I buy and sell narcotics to people, but nothing's ever going to happen to me. I'm bulletproof.
Yeah.
Um, and so
You're
that
10
never even
feet
occurred
tall
to
and
me.
bulletproof. And yeah,
Right, right.
absolutely.
Yeah, nothing will ever happen to me. That's other people. Oh, and then so it just never really occurred to me that by being on SWAT team, I would be putting myself in even more danger. But yeah, he wasn't happy about it.
Oh boy. So did you grow up in Gainesville?
No, I say, people say, where are you from? And I say, I'm from the South. I'm primarily from Louisiana. I
Mm.
was born in North Louisiana. And then I'll say this: second grade, we moved to Missouri. Third grade, we moved to, no, yeah, second grade, Missouri, third grade, Oklahoma, fourth grade, Arkansas, moved back to Louisiana in seventh grade. And then I finished high school in Louisiana. And then I moved to Florida when I went for college.
Wow. Yeah, you went
Yeah.
to the home of Tom Petty, Gainesville, Florida.
I did. Yeah. I love that in your email. Not many people know that. In fact, one of his songs, which of course I'm not gonna be able to remember the name of it right now, mentions Beatty Towers. And that is two of the most popular dorms on campus at the University of Florida, which I did not live in,
Oh,
but I know
okay.
that yeah.
Yeah, because I'm a huge Tom Petty fan. I've seen him
Mm.
probably about 15 times, and
Oh,
I
wow.
saw
You are.
him about 6 months before he passed away.
Oh, yeah. That's a bummer. That's one of
It,
the ones I
it
wish I
was.
would have seen. But yeah,
Yeah.
I never
Oh,
saw
just
him. But,
probably one of the best, like garage bands like ever.
mm, yeah.
Just no frills, just plain old rock
Just
and roll,
played.
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I loved his attitude, and there was a great biography about him, and
Mm,
that's where I learned about like Gainesville, Florida.
mhm,
His first band was Mudcrutch,
mm.
and they played a ton of frat parties and sorority parties
Oh, yeah.
at
He
the college
probably
there.
came. I'm trying to remember. By the time I was in college, he was pretty big, so he wouldn't have come back to play like any kind of local, you know,
Yeah,
just fair
yeah.
or something. But
You're way too young because I think it was in the 70s when he started. It was like the mid
oh
to late
yeah,
70s.
thank you for
So
saying that. Although I mean, I feel like I'll be 50 next year. Like, holy crap, how does that happen?
it happens really quickly. That's how it happens. But
Dang it.
yeah, you're
Dang
still a
it.
pup. You're still a pup. So
Yeah.
you wind up going to the sheriff's department. Can you say which one?
Mhm.
Which one?
Yeah, at Alachua County Sheriff's Office. I'm proud of it. I mean, I definitely had some struggles when I was there.
Okay.
Hence why I am went to law school. But and I'm very proud to say, like, the reason why that I got SWAT team is because of my captain. The reason why I got paid to go to the academy instead of just having to scrape by on ramen noodles, which I feel like in hindsight, the amount of money I got paid, I feel like I was still scraping by on ramen noodles. But at the time I thought, oh my gosh, this is great, I'm getting a salary to go to, and it was not very much. I mean, I got a raise when I went full-time in patrol, and the starting salary was $27,500, and I was making less than that when I was in the police academy. But I was like, hey, I know I'm making some money. But
What
the
what year
the
was that when you got hired on and you were in the academy?
uh 2000.
Okay. That's
Yeah, I
not too
started
far from
May.
me.
I graduated.
I was in 95 when I
Yeah,
first
I,
started.
I graduated from University of Florida in May of 2000, and 1 week later I started the police academy.
Wow.
Um, I had made that decision in that spring. Didn't really know because I had no background in law enforcement. I ended up I knew somebody that worked at the sheriff's office, and they were like, well, hey, why don't you just do a couple of ride-alongs? So I went and met the lieutenant who was in HR at the time, who ended up being captain overall of patrol, who ended up being the man who forced them to put me on the SWAT team because they couldn't say they couldn't give him a reason why they wouldn't put me on other than me just being a chick. And then, like, he was my champion the whole way. Now he is now the interim sheriff at Alachua County Sheriff's Office and running for sheriff. And
Oh,
I am not afraid to say, I know maybe we shouldn't get into politics, but I'm saying that everyone in Alachua County should vote for Emery Gainey for sheriff because he is a very fair-minded and really good sheriff. Now, you can't make people happy all the time,
no.
all the people all the time, but I think he's a very fair man, and would be very good for Alachua County. Anyway, I did a couple ride-alongs, went to the police academy, didn't know necessarily that I was going to go to Alachua County, but then at the time he was trying to get more college grads into the sheriff's office. And so the timing worked out that he's like, hey, if you wanted to, we'll pay you to go to the academy and you come to work for us. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had no plan. I didn't know where to go to get a job. So that worked out. So I ended up living in Gainesville for 15 years. No, 12 years. I was in Florida for a total of 15. I was in Gainesville for
Mm,
12,
okay.
um, through college and the sheriff's office.
Now the academy in Florida, they have like central like training
Mhm.
facilities, correct? It's a little bit different than other places. Could you kind of explain that?
Right. So like Houston, I live in Houston, Texas now. Like HPD has their own academy, and everybody
Right.
that goes through their academy is like they run it, it's their people, and everybody goes to their department. Ours was run through the Santa Fe Community College. and you could go to anywhere after that, as long as you just pass later you have to pass the academy, then pass the state exam, and then you can get hired somebody anywhere else. Now, a lot of them do go to Alachua County or Gainesville Police Department, where where Alachua County, Gainesville sits inside of Alachua County.
Mm.
But no, we were just a central, so it was,
Right.
people went to all over Florida after that.
That's what I thought. Now, how big of a department is Alachua County?
I think at the time,
Sheriff's.
and certainly it's probably grown a little bit, although the captain or Sheriff Gainey told me that they were way understaffed when he came in. He was trying to hire like 60 people a month when he let this past fall. But he
Wow.
said, and it was kind of scary, like, please don't change your standards. I mean, that's one of the things that
Right.
kind of
Absolutely.
scares me across the country, is that people are changing their standards in order to bring in more recruits. But I mean, other than like, okay, maybe weed doesn't count as much as it used to back in the day, but other than that, like, well, how are you changing your standards? Because that's scary.
Correct.
But I think I want to say we were somewhere around 250 sworn deputies. I don't know. They also have the jail. I don't know how many correctional officers they have. But I certainly don't remember all in
Right.
civilian and everything. But I think we were around between 250 and 275 sworn officers, sworn
Okay.
deputies.
All
Yeah.
righty. So academy life, was it what you thought it was going to be?
Um, I would say no, because I didn't, certainly not Police Academy movie days, which dating both of us by mentioning that. But
Yes.
I knew it wouldn't be a joke, so I'm kidding about that. But I didn't know if it was going to be just full on drill sergeant boot camp style, or I didn't expect it to be lax. But it wasn't as stringent maybe as I expected it to be in terms of boot camp style.
Yeah.
But certainly that was, yes, you had a uniform and you had to look a certain way, and you had to, certainly they would have dinged the heck out of you if you've been late. And what I love about the police academy is there are physical standards that you have to, or at least they were. I feel like all of that's way too lax now. But because they don't want to hurt people's feelings or something. But there was the physical aspect of it, and I went into it to be, because I wanted to be held accountable to being fit, and in shape, and I liked that part of it a lot, with all the physical activities we would do. I mean, I would show up, and if the academy didn't start until 1 o'clock that day, because we were going to do night things, I would go for a run before the academy started that day, regardless of whatever we were doing. So I was certainly now I'm much older and 3 kids and running a business. Who has time? I still work out, but I worked out much more back then. It was not as I guess as stringent as I expected it to be, and yet I still towed the line on the rules and the
Sure.
paramilitary aspects of it.
You didn't shave your head.
I did not. No, I
Okay.
did. I used to have really long hair, and I got it really short at the time, but I never could bring myself to actually shaving my
Okay.
head. Yeah.
So how many females were in your class?
Um, I know we kind of talked about this before, and I got that question, like, dang it. I think it was certainly the minority.
Yeah.
There was one other lady that had moved down from Ohio. She was an experienced law enforcement officer. Like, she had no business being put through an academy, because she knew what she was doing, but she did it, and I highly respected her for it. We lost touch, but she's somebody I wish I would have kept in touch with more,
Yeah.
especially given the challenges I faced once I got into the sheriff's office. But um, I can't remember, like maybe 4 out of, we had 30 to 40, I think, in
Okay.
our academy class. I wish I remembered this, but isn't it funny how those details fade away?
Oh yeah, they sure do. Yes, they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and as far as like physical standards, what I have seen through the years, I started in 95. And when I
Mm-hmm.
started, what I loved about the physical standards, you took a PT test as part of getting hired.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't
Yeah.
matter what you looked like. It didn't matter what your
Mm-hmm.
gender was. It didn't matter. It's like, can you jump over that 6 foot wall in under 30 seconds? Can you
Yeah.
run,
Yep.
a half a mile in under 4 minutes? And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how much money you had in your wallet. It doesn't matter what you look like or who you prayed
Mm-hmm.
to or whatever. And that's the way it should
Mm-hmm.
be. But
Mm-hmm.
now there's no, the best way I could put it is they're dumbing it down. And they started doing that a
Oh yeah.
while ago. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. They're like, well, we should do an obstacle course. And it's like, okay, because I still remember the one that I had was a flex arm hang. you had to hang on a chin-up bar for 45 seconds. You couldn't let your chin go down.
Mhm.
Then
Mhm.
from there, you had the dummy drag, and then you had to jump over the wall. Then you did the half-mile run under 4 minutes. And if you failed any of it, you were
Mhm.
done. Just you were
Yeah.
out. Now it's
Yeah.
like, well, a lot of the females couldn't do the 6-foot wall. It wasn't a cyclone fence or whatever, but we're not going to dummy it down on the street. And then
Right.
some of the
Fight
big
is a fight.
right, and some of the big muscle heads couldn't support their body weight for 45
Yeah.
seconds on the chin up bar because there was two guys ahead of
Mhm.
me that were like a lot bigger than me. And I thought, well, I
Mhm.
was working out all the time, blah, blah. Both of them, boom, boom. They didn't last more than like 15 seconds. And I'm just like, oh God, I'm
Mhm.
so screwed. But,
Mhm.
you just do it. But,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now we're going to do an obstacle course. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the Fire and Police Commission hand, I shouldn't say handpicked. It was kind of like a lottery where they're just going to pick you if you're working to run this obstacle course. And they just
Mhm.
wanted a baseline. Well, I'm working midnight
Mhm.
to 8. I'm dog tired. Whatever. I get a call and it's
Mhm.
like, go to the academy. And I'm like, why? It's like, all
Yeah.
right. So I go, and it was a gal that I knew, one of the secretaries from the Fire and Police Commission. Hey, Pat, how are you doing? I'm like, good. She said, you're going to run an obstacle course today. I'm like, what? I mean, I got all my gear, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, ugh. It's like, could I at least take my
Mhm.
belt off? And she said,
Mhm.
sure. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I stowed that stuff. So I'm wearing combat boots and the rest of the,
Mhm.
uniform. And I go through it and I let myself slip physically, let my physicality slip a little bit when I was working late shift. I had kids.
Mhm.
I didn't sleep. I still
Oh,
work
yeah.
out, but it's
Possible.
not the same. So
No.
I go through it and she's like, pretty good. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're like the second or third best time we've had so far. And I'm like, I suck. How could this be? And at the time I was
Yeah.
like in my mid 30s. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you mean some 21-year-old kid can't beat the
Mhm.
snot out of me in this course? That's scary.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. I
then
remember our,
it got worse though, because I'm at the academy for some kind of training and there's a bunch of recruits in their little recruit outfits
Mhm.
standing, waiting to get inspected. And I'm looking at some of the guys, they've got like Santa Claus bellies. I mean, like
Yeah.
hanging over their belts. And I have a buddy that's a sergeant there. And I said, oh, this is your new crop. You have fun with that. And he said, no, they're graduating in a week. I'm like, he said, I've got full grown men that can't do one push up. Now,
And these are the people who are supposed to protect you and fight for you. And yeah, that
well,
is.
those are also the people that are going to escalate when it comes to the force continuum. They're
Mhm.
going to be the ones who are going to go towards more, maybe not lethal, but sometimes lethal force
Yeah.
when, you know what, if you could actually wrestle with this person and get them down and get them handcuffed,
Mhm.
the fight's over. We're
Mhm.
done. But
Mhm.
instead you keep on ramping it up because
Mhm.
you don't have the physicality to do the job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they think they're doing something great by doing that, but yeah, it's not good. But I'll get off
I
my
totally
soapbox.
no, well, I totally agree with you. I've never ever, and I will strongly say, and I care not if I offend a single female out there to say this. There are no such thing as different standards for men and women because, like I said, and we agree. I mean, a fight is a fight. The street is the street. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no. It's not like somebody's going to go easier on you because you're a female or because you can't fight or whatever the reason is. I passed the SWAT team trial on the same standards as the guys. I mean, and I would expect it to be nothing else. How could you possibly respect me as an operator if I'm not being held to the same standard as you?
Yeah.
But also from a safety perspective and for your community. I mean, I will get on the soapbox with you and talk about it until the sun comes up and the crows sing that, I mean, the rooster sings that, and longer, that 100% you should never change that standard. And too many places, I remember shortly after I got out of at the sheriff's office, it was right before I started law school and I was teaching, I filled in for somebody teaching at a community college at their police academy. And I said something and I was just joking about like, well, better be careful or you'll get some push-ups. And they said, oh no, they can't do that to us anymore. They can't give us any kind of push-ups. Are you kidding me? Like, no, no, no. And it hurts people's feelings or, like, and our obstacle course mentioning that we proved like the narcotics or the SWAT guys, a couple of them proved a point how pathetically low the standard was for our obstacle course. They did the whole thing backwards, ran the whole thing backwards, and still came in under the time threshold. And that was 20 years ago.
You
And,
know,
and it's just, they don't even hardly have those standards now.
no, and and there's all kinds of stuff, reform the police,
Mm.
better training, better this, better that, but they keep on saying that, but they don't do it.
Right.
Because it's like we up here we have called our like physical training for like arresting people or whatever is
Mm.
DAT,
Mhm.
defense and arrest
Mhm.
techniques.
Mhm.
People have different acronyms for it,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
It's a court defensible way of punching, kicking,
Mhm.
whatever to get somebody into handcuffs more or less.
Mhm.
And a few years back, probably about, well, more than a few, probably about 10 years, the national trend was going towards ground fighting because almost every fight, inevitably,
Mhm.
you wind up on the ground.
Yep.
So some really basic like jujitsu stuff,
Mhm.
joint locks, how to
Yep.
get out of a headlock, the
Mhm.
stuff that we didn't train before. And
Right.
our department refused to do it. They said, well, people are going to get hurt when we're training them. And I'm just like,
Well, they're getting hurt
yeah,
anyway. I
exactly.
mean,
And
they're
but
getting
if
hurt
you're
in
not trained
training, they're
properly,
getting hurt on the
then
street. Yeah.
that's when things go sideways on the street. When you have somebody that is not trained properly,
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
anything can happen. You could be trained to, you could be Bruce freaking Lee, but weird shit happens. And
Yeah.
that's reality.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's go back here.
I know. Okay. I know.
So you go on field training. Did you go solo right after field training? Most of these sheriff's departments, I think, are one
Mm.
person squads, right?
Yes. Yes. The solo on my own, I remember this distinctly. New Year's Day, first call in the car by myself, and I get the 3P to 3A shift, which I was so happy about it because that's like the fun shift. Like it's busy the whole time,
Sure.
and first call I got by myself was shots fired into an occupied home and the shooter's on scene, and I was less than 5 minutes away. And so I was like heading
And
out
you're
to my,
brand
like, and
new.
I go
Oh
to
my
turn
God.
around and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Cause like, I mean, I knew some people who had struggled in the field training program because they were bad with directions. Like and when you're in the county, like you got to be able to get, you can't always
Sure.
stop and pull over and pull out the map. But I've always been really good at that. And so like I didn't have to pull out the map. I knew exactly. I just turned around and like I was like, oh my gosh. And thankfully, even though it didn't take me long to get there, by the time I got there, the shooter was gone. Nobody was killed. But I mean, I just couldn't believe, like, you've got to be kidding me. Yeah. And I think the rest of the shift was dead that day. But yeah, the first call, certainly the pucker factor was at 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I I distinctly remember pulling out of the driveway at the district station by myself. For
Hmm.
us,
Hmm.
they didn't let you go out one man until you were done with probation.
Mm.
I was in one of the worst areas of the city. They were almost all two-man cars because of the safety factor.
Hmm.
That it just made sense.
Yeah.
But like I think somebody called it sick or whatever who knows what.
Hmm.
And I'm just pulling out there and I'm like, holy shit.
Hmm.
This is very real right now.
Hmm.
It's like, wow.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah,
plenty of
you'll
times
never
when, yeah, always on ourselves and in the county where you could be out in the middle of the night and it's very rural. I remember one time pulling somebody over and I was in patrol, I mean, only for a year before I went to the narcotics unit. So this was in this year. And it was on this highway out in the country, no spotlight, no street lights. So pitch black, pitch black. And I'm running and I run the guy and he comes back with a warrant and I'm having to wait. So they come back with a warrant. So they immediately dispatch somebody because we definitely had a strong policy. And me being a female, I'm not stupid. Like I'm not going to put hands on somebody. And it was a guy that was arresting. And I was not going to put hands on without backup. And so,
absolutely.
I was really good at people would say, oh, hey, did you get in a lot of fights? People always saying, oh, did you get in a lot of fights? Did you shoot anybody? Thankfully, no. But also the fact that I did undercover for most of that changed my interactions with people. But
Sure.
um, yeah, I remember my verbal judo skills were strong that night because he's like, "What's taking so?" Oh my gosh, this ditch, but I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry," covering up my mic as though I needed. Oh, dispatch is taking forever. I'm so sorry. We have to always just check things, and they're taking forever. I'm so sorry, they're taking forever. And then as soon as my backup showed up, I'm like, "Okay, you're under arrest. There's a warrant." And so, I mean, but yeah, that was plenty of times where I thought, "Ooh, crap." Or the times you're pulling up on a house for a call and all of a sudden you get that feeling of, I remember pulling up to a mobile home one time thinking, like I needed to make sure my backup was with me. You just get that feeling like
Yeah.
this does not feel right. And I am not walking up to that house. I'm not walking up to that door unless, I mean, I remember we came up with a plan of like, I don't really want to walk straight up to the door. We need to come from the side. And I
Oh,
go, gee,
sure.
I
Yep.
mean, it was just, I still remember like it just did not, and it turned out to be nothing, but it was, I just, as soon as we were pulling up to the house, like, again, pitch black in the country. And I waited for backup to before we did anything. But anyway, yeah, plenty of those
Oh, yeah.
stories.
Absolutely. So you do your time about a year
Hmm.
in like street patrol,
Yep.
and then you went over to narcotics. How did you wind up over there?
They didn't have a female. I mean, it's that simple.
Okay,
So,
because yeah, I thought, that's unusual unless you
mhm,
have a hookup of some kind.
mhm,
You've got a rabbi, you got a friend, you got somebody in upper ranks
yep,
that's like, hey, I've got this cool spot for you in
mhm,
plain clothes, narcotics. That's a pretty coveted spot. A lot of people would want that.
yep,
And for a rookie to get it, I mean, we could go into it a little bit more, but I know
mhm,
agencies sometimes will take them because you have to fill a slot.
yep,
You know, okay, it makes sense that I have a female that's 25 years old that kind of looks like a college kid.
mhm,
This is perfect for what we need.
yeah. Well, sadly, I didn't do any of the college. I did a few college things. Like we were trying to, this was, and right after, not long after 9/11, I remember we had a kid that was selling fake IDs, which became a very, I mean, not that you don't really ever care about that, but the Fed started really caring
Oh
about it
yeah,
after 9/11.
absolutely.
And he
Right.
was selling really good, like fake IDs, like driver's license level. And, and so that became a federal case. So you talk about that kid, like a pucker factor. Like when we finally arrested him, I was like, you don't understand. This is not my case. This is a federal case and you are effed. And it's, just some stupid college kid trying to make, some extra bucks. And the next thing you know, he's facing federal felony charges. And I don't remember what happened to it after that. I don't even remember if the feds followed through on it. But I mean, that is yeah, I used to tell people like, look, you should be scared if you have a case against me, but you should be really scared if the feds come after you because you don't have the same type of disclosure rights. I
Yep.
mean, you talk about, not to do politics, but the whole January 6th people are like throwing people in jail and not letting them have any like day in court and all that. Like they can do that at the federal level. You can't do it at the state level. Anyway,
Right.
so yeah, it was about a year. Well, I guess I went, yeah, let's just say about a year. I mean,
Okay. Give
maybe it
and
was a
take.
year and
Yeah.
a month. I don't know, but they didn't have a female. Um, and I also think there is some value in bringing in somebody new because they're not known yet. No, you haven't had a
Right.
time to arrest everybody that gets arrested, and it's easier for you to like go into the known drug spots because nobody's ever seen you. Because you get moved around in the county a good bit, and the way our jurisdiction worked, and I mean our county worked, and so 5 years in, like I'm in every neighborhood at some point, and
Sure.
like I'm
Absolutely.
not the normal white dude walking around. So people would be like, who's that little white girl, that deputy that showed up? So, and you don't realize, but they do. I mean, the criminals, the career criminals remember. And
Yeah.
so I think there's some value in putting in somebody that's unknown early on in a unit like that. And then why did I get it? It's because they didn't have a female. But then also, but yes, and I know we could talk about this, is the value of having experience, more experience than I had when you go into any type of specialized unit. I certainly, there's significant value in having more experience than I had in being prepared for what, from my perspective, and being prepared for what the job is going to do to you. Um, in terms of how do you then handle even more of the crap or the
Sure.
just, there's no good parts of narcotics investigations. Um, I mean, there's just no good.
So,
Whereas
for our listeners and watchers, your narcotics, how big of a like unit was it? It couldn't be that big.
not big, sadly, not big at all. Well, we had an undercover side and a uniform side.
Okay.
And so meaning that the uniform side would focus more of their time. They weren't like general patrol. They would focus on the high crime, high drug areas, and they would
Sure.
stay just right there. Or they would be support for us if we were doing, so for example, if I was doing we do either by walks or by bus. By
Mhm.
walks are where you do the drug. We, in our jurisdiction, we had to have 3 buys from a house or structure before we could get a search warrant. We would do those by walks. I go then get my search warrant, and we come back and we execute it with the SWAT team, and then we blah 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 find the drugs, arrest the
Right.
people. By walks are where somebody would go in undercover to a high crime, high drug area. I'd buy the crack or whatever. And then I'd, on the mic, the bug, I would say, okay, looks good. And then we'd roll out, and then the uniforms guys
So
come
you'd
in
arrest
and
them right away.
arrest the people who who just sold it to us.
Okay.
So undercover side, we had, I want to say at peak, it was, I think 6. And then at one point it was just me.
Jeez.
On the low end. And then, but that didn't last too long. But yeah, there was a time where I was the only narcotics investigator, which was sad.
And
And then
and
on
what
the
people don't understand is when you're going to buy drugs from somebody, you're wearing probably like jeans, t-shirt, try to look like a crackhead.
Mhm.
And you don't have a vest, you don't have a gun, you don't have an ID. I mean, you're just Jane citizen.
Yeah, I did start off wearing an ankle holster,
Okay.
and then I got super close to being searched one time.
Oh yeah.
And I never did that again. And then I switched to, it was called a Kel-Tec P380, like a super slim that fit
Yep.
inside my waistband. But again, I never when I was wearing that, I was never in a position where I felt like I was going to get a pat down, because there's no way to explain that. And I bought drugs too many times with somebody holding a gun or with a rifle right next to them.
Yep.
And there's no chance they're not going to either beat the crap out of me or shoot me in that situation. So while I did think I was a little bit too much bulletproof still at the time, I did enough of that to know these guys will shoot me or beat me to a pulp if they need to. So yeah, I had plenty. It was just nuts. It's just nuts.
I mean, in a perfect world, you have all kinds of backup around
Yeah.
the area. You're
Hmm.
never quote unquote on your own. You're not going to go into a house by yourself,
Oh
hopefully.
no, never without backup and
Right.
support. And yeah, but still, I mean, they're not right there, and it doesn't take
Things
long to
happen
pull a
fast.
trigger.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Things happen really fast.
Yeah.
And as far as like, we could debate it's like I understand the reasons why they would put you in with not a
Mhm.
lot of experience, but
Mhm.
what I have seen through, 25 years was okay, they would grab somebody, and especially a female,
Mhm.
and this might sound sexist, but you'd have these like creepy bosses that thinking they're going to get lucky or something like that. They
Mhm.
wanted cute girls around. And I'm
Mm.
just like, okay, that's not right. And we all
Mhm.
knew what they were doing,
Mhm.
but they would get all the off days that they wanted. They would get all kinds of special stuff, and they're working this super high speed thing. But like everything else, nothing lasts forever. Mr.
Yeah.
Creepy Boss Guy goes by the wayside. He retires, he goes to a different unit,
Mhm.
or a new chief comes in and it's like, you know what? We don't need this narcotics unit.
Yeah.
If we don't arrest people for drugs, then we don't have a drug problem. We
Right.
actually had that happen. It's like poof, it's all gone. It is
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so what happens then is you've got 10, 15 years in doing this undercover, high speed, really cool stuff. Now you're back on the street.
Mhm.
You're nobody special.
Mhm.
And you're just sitting there with your thumb up your butt going, I don't remember how to do any of this. You have to
Yeah.
get retrained again. Or what I've seen is they take promotion exams. Hey,
Mhm.
now I'm a sergeant,
Mhm.
but I've had 0 reps on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, I could write up a drug arrest or a warrant
Yeah.
blindfolded,
Yeah.
but the other 80 or 90% of police work, I'm clueless.
Yeah.
So I think it's a disservice.
Yeah.
I'm up on that soapbox one more time. It's like, I think for something like that, rotation in a perfect world, you rotate it.
Yeah.
There should be an
Yeah, because
expiration date on that.
we didn't have, even though I'm an undercover narcotics, we were not the type of county or the department to have like deep undercover long-term things. And I
Mm.
wouldn't have done that. I mean, I probably would have thought, or that at the time I probably would have thought it's cool. And it applied to the DEA, and the DEA does do that. So maybe there was a
Sure.
chance in an alternate world where I would have done, but like, especially in hindsight, like that is deep, dangerous, dirty, lose yourself, go crazy kind of world. But I do think you're right in the sense that you you go from the narcotics world, and to me it's like, I don't want to, not to discredit, it's just a completely different frame of mind, the way that you hide the way that you're not out in the public. And then you do that I did it for 2.5 years.
Yeah,
And then you come back out, and I did go back to patrol for about 3 months before I left the sheriff's office. And like, I didn't remember what paperwork to do if you had somebody that died, and like, oh, it's natural
sure,
causes. And then you got to fill out the paperwork and wait for somebody to come get the body or whatever. And like, I had to have literally somebody. I used to have like my patrol call originally. I had a little file thing. This is back in the paper
sure.
days. Now you probably
Yeah.
just type it up on your computer, but like I didn't have
We
my
didn't
little
have
file
computers
thing
when I
set,
started.
and somebody had to bring me the paperwork, and
Yep.
my ear wasn't even tuned to the radio the way
Sure.
that it needed to be. Like I got there, like, oh, one time, like, Bridget, they're calling you, like, oh, sorry, okay, Delta 9, I'm on en route. And so there's that, almost that there needs to be like a transition between, because
Yes.
you're just putting everybody at risk. But that's just not the way it works. You're like, hey, on Monday you're going back to patrol. Like, oh, okay. Now I did ask. My story is that towards the end, I was like, F all of you. I walked into my captain's office and I said, I want off narcotics unit and SWAT team right now, and I want day shift. And he knew knew what was happening. He's like, you got it. Okay, you start Monday. And so I did have a radical shift, but
So
kind of
you did narcotics for about 2 years, you said 2.5?
that was about 3 years, and
Okay.
I was on, and then I joined the narcotics unit, I want to say in like November, and then I got on the SWAT team in, I think, around January.
Oh, so you're
So
doing both at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
because you didn't have a full-time SWAT team,
no,
obviously.
we were a call out team or a part-time team, however you want to call it. Because we didn't have, thankfully, didn't have the need for a full-time SWAT team, although we did train a lot. We had a great sheriff at the time who really put a lot of time and dedication into training hours for everybody, good equipment for everybody, and then definitely gave the SWAT team a lot of training time. I mean, as
Okay.
you should, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So you go over to SWAT while you're doing the narcotics stuff.
Hmm.
Um, that's a huge pull on you personally. Were you married? Did you have kids back then?
No kids, thank goodness. A long-term boyfriend. Not, I mean, I thought at the time I'm never going to be married,
Yeah.
but with somebody for a long time. And then that changed. I mean, obviously I've been married a long time now, but
Sure.
not with that person. But
Okay.
great person. We parted ways. But yeah, I was with someone, but no kids, thankfully.
Because when you're doing that kind of work,
Hmm.
like you said, it messes with your head.
Hmm.
And, you know, I was used to, we had a full-time SWAT team, we had a full-time gang squad, we had a full-time
Hmm.
narcotics, whatever. So
Hmm.
you really didn't get called into work unless
Hmm.
the world was coming into an end, or something really big was going on.
Hmm.
Then yeah, then you're gonna get the phone call. But
Hmm.
most part, they would just farm out the people that were already there.
Hmm.
Okay, you work midnight to 8. Well, now you're working till indefinitely.
Yeah.
If the shit was hitting the
Hmm.
fan,
Hmm.
that's just the way we did it. But we
Hmm.
had the resources where a lot of other departments don't. So,
Hmm.
you're on the SWAT teams, you could be in the middle of whatever, and you
Hmm.
have to be ready just to jump off and do whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, or you're in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and the beeper goes off, also dating myself. I don't know how they do it nowadays, but the beeper would go off and get called in for something. I remember one time that was a guy that who was high on meth. That's back when meth was just first starting, or at least when it made its way to the southeast. And he was actively shooting a rifle into the neighborhood. And for people who don't know, rifle rounds go through almost anything.
They they
Like
go
we
through
had
a lot of stuff, yes.
special vests for rifle rounds we would wear, like ceramic plated, like steel plates, like not things that are easy to wear, but that's the only thing that will stop a rifle round. Like my house that I'm in right now, because I'm working from home today, not a rifle round would go through multiple walls before it
Right.
would stop. And so this guy was shooting rifle out into the neighborhood. And yeah, that was one of the middle of the night calls we got. But yeah, I mean, we would execute search warrants. The SWAT team executed our search warrants. I know
Yes.
there are some narcotics units that do a lot of SWAT type training, and they execute their own, like, do their own entries. We use SWAT team for that. So
Yeah,
I
we
would,
went back and forth in our
yeah. So
agency with
we would
that.
do like SWAT team. I'd put my SWAT hat on, although I was the only chick on the team. So I got to do one entry ever, even though I trained just like they did. I was the equipment van girl, and we called it the bread van, but
Yeah, so did we.
but
The
yeah, so
bread van, yeah.
I would have my SWAT hat on and my SWAT gear, and then that would be over, and I would stow all that back in my car, and then I'd put my, proverbial narcotics hat on, and then we would take over and then do all the narcotics stuff. And then, sometimes that, as you know, in narcotics world, that stuff flips and somebody's like, yeah, I'll
Sure.
take you to who I get this stuff
Right.
from. And then the next thing you know, you're working 24, 36 hours straight.
Yeah,
Because you got to work it while it's hot. And those are
absolutely.
long, not fun days.
So
But
why did you
yeah.
want to go to SWAT?
Physically, I thought that sounded really cool. And again, I knew it would set me apart from other people going to the feds. So I thought
Sure.
that's what I still want. At the time, I thought that's what I wanted to do
So
still.
kind of a resume builder too.
Yeah. And I just thought it was super cool. And
Yeah, of
it
course. You got
was
machine
super
guns and you get to
cool.
like flashbangs and all
And the
kinds of
training of
cool
it,
stuff.
and the fact that I was the only female doing it and I could do it. I mean, I physically could do. I mean, was I the same? Could I fight the way that Brian Gaynor could? I mean, I'm not that. God bless him. He's still alive, thank goodness. Um, but he's a former Marine. I mean, we obviously looked very different. But we could complete the same trainings. We completed the same O course. We competed in the same SWAT competition together. I mean,
Okay.
all the things, and like, yeah, it was awesome. I got to train all the time. I loved it. Um, yeah, just resume builder and just a really awesome thing to do.
Yeah. For our department, when I first started, there was zero qualifications to get on the SWAT team except for you had to be in the club. Yeah,
Yeah.
you had to be one of the good old boys. And
Ultimately, I'm not on SWAT team because I'm not really part of the club.
yeah. So
Yeah.
ours is called the Tactical Enforcement Unit, and they call it tick and talk, the inner circle and the outer circle.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to discredit these guys. They did amazing work. They're super high speed professionals.
Hmm.
But when I first started, I thought, man, that'd be really cool. And then I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm not fitting into their mold. And
Hmm.
secondly, I'd have to work early shift, which was like 4 in the afternoon till midnight or somewhere in that
Hmm.
ballpark. And we're starting to have kids.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, it's more important for me to stay late shift, midnight to 8, because I can do all the kid stuff.
Yeah.
So I chose my children over doing, the SWAT thing or the motorcycle thing or the
Hmm.
whatever thing, it's like,
Hmm.
so that's the direction that I went. But where I worked, there was no physical standards. Now, some of these guys were like studs. They played in the NFL, they, or college football. I mean, and they kept themselves up. I mean, they were just unbelievable athletes, and
Hmm.
some weren't.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, my friend that I bowl with on Tuesdays or play darts with or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
there was that stuff going on.
Hmm.
And then we got a new chief, and he's like, okay, this is bullshit. And you don't have any minorities. So he flooded it with minorities that didn't even want to do the job.
Ugh.
And, it just became, yeah, I have a good friend that was on this show. And as a cop, he wanted to be on the SWAT team.
Hmm.
And, he was a Marine, kept himself in really good shape, great arrest record, just everything was outstanding.
Hmm.
And no, he was just stonewall.
Hmm.
And the new chief came in, and he's like, he just gets promoted to sergeant. The new chief comes in and he says, okay, on this piece of paper it says you're going to District 7 late shift, you're going to SWAT. And he's like, and he told the chief, he said, no, I
Well,
want to
to
learn how to
me,
become a sergeant first.
that's nuts, because to me that would be like saying, I know you wanted to have an epidural to have a baby, but now I'm not going to give you one. Like, I
Yeah.
know women who have had babies without an epidural. I'm not one of them. But what I understand is you 100% that has to be, your mindset. Now, could I have had babies without it? Yes, I could have, but I would not have wanted to. And it's a mindset. You have to want to be there, because
Right.
the environment is tough. Working around these guys is tough. And then the situations that you face are tough. I
Yes.
mean, we almost killed many people, and only by twist of a second did
Yep.
we not have to kill a hostage taker or the guy shooting the rifle out in the neighborhood, or so many situations. But that is a mindset thing, and I don't think you should ever put somebody on any specialized unit that they're not applying for, because every one of them requires, it is a mental choice that you should and must have to
Right.
survive.
So there were physical requirements for you to get on the SWAT team. You had
Oh
to
yeah,
pass,
yeah.
it was like an obstacle course, run,
Grueling
all the
all
above.
day tryout. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We started with a run, and then we drove somewhere. I don't remember the. I think we started with a run. We drove somewhere. We did the obstacle course. Obstacle course was same for me as it was for the guys. part of that is the dummy drag. And I was so dead, but I just remember like digging my fingers into the heels of the dummy. Thank God it's not a real human person. I was able to dig my fingers into the fake feet of the dummy and drag them as far. I can't remember how far it was. It felt like a mile, get the dummy into the van. And I felt like I was never going to be able to like open my fingers again. And then we had to do a shooting, like a long range shooting. Then we had to do rappelling. And then at the end of all that was an interview. But yeah, I mean, I was the same standard, and it should never be any different, ever,
Right.
ever. I mean, unless you're having somebody that's part of the team that really just does like a tactical, not tactical, like a tech ops or something like that. And we didn't have that. But I mean, even our volunteer EMT guys that were assigned to the team with us, or the doctor that was a volunteer that would go on calls with us sometimes, they still did the tryouts because they wanted to know they could do it.
Oh,
They
okay.
went with us on all training exercises because they needed to be part of it and run it and
Sure.
physically feel it. But I mean, they weren't required to. But anyway, yeah, I definitely there was a physical requirement. And I mean, going back to what you said, it is a Bubba's Club, no doubt. And I would not have been allowed into that Bubba's Club had I not had the very specific captain over me as a part of as my champion.
Okay.
I never would have, nobody else would have done it but him. And I'll say this, he's a black man, and he started as a black man in law enforcement. Oh, he just recently retired, then he got pulled back in to be sheriff. So, I mean, at least the 80s, if not the late 70s. And I don't want to, sorry, Sheriff Gainey, if I'm making you older than you are, I can't remember. All due respect. But you know, he was a black man in a small southern town when that was probably not an easy job for him.
Probably not.
So I would say that it wasn't for that very specific man. I never would have made SWAT team. They never would have put me on it. Because remember, and my SWAT commander told me 3 times, 3 explicit times, you are only on this team because the captain made me do it.
Oof.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's a bonus club.
but if you passed the physical requirements, you could shoot well, you could do everything. There's no reason why you shouldn't be on it.
Nope.
But yeah, but you know, you have to pass everything. That's
Yeah, I did
and
it.
and I know our department and other departments where to check boxes, they'll look the other way for certain
Mm-mm.
things. And
And I would never
not
have
just
wanted to.
SWAT, but other specialty units, you know, et
Right.
cetera. You know, like motorcycles, you can either do it or you can't do it.
Right. Right.
And yeah, but I had a partner as a sergeant. She was a new promotion. She came from the motorcycles and she passed it. She could ride a motorcycle like crazy. She was really, really good. But she
Mm-hmm.
was one of only a handful
Yeah, I
of
see. Like, I
females.
never would have tried out for the motorcycle unit because I don't ride a motorcycle, and I don't want to. Like, that's just not like it's not my thing. And so, and also being a female in that position, I never would have wanted anything other than the same standard, the same expectations, the same rules, because it was already hard enough to be there. I mean, it's just never would I mean, I never really achieved their, I don't know, the respect is not the right word, because some of them I think they kind of sort of respected me, but um, I never would have achieved anything had it not been the same requirements by everybody. I mean, we competed in international SWAT Roundup Internationals in Orlando every year in November. We competed against international teams
Yeah.
and many across the United States, but people from international countries like Germany, Sarajevo. I mean, amazing teams. I had to try out against my own SWAT team members to make the roundup, the competition team. I beat out at least half of my own teammates
Yeah.
to make this competition team, and then we went and we placed in the top 20 or the top 10. So, I mean, physically, yes, I was better than, or really, I just always probably tried harder than them because they could have been just as good as, if not better, if they tried. But I always tried. And so, yeah, physically, that was not the issue at all. My shooting skills were never the issue.
Okay. So, you know, what people don't realize too is most SWAT teams are very deeply mired in politics. You know,
Mm.
chiefs and sheriffs have a love-hate relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's super awesome when, you know, you conduct a search warrant, you breach the door, you get bad guys,
Yep.
everything's honky dory.
Yep.
But if something goes sideways, now all of a sudden it's like, ooh, we really
Yep.
don't like them. Ooh, they look like they're the army, for God's sakes. They drive
Yeah.
tanks around town. And
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh.
you
So
know,
yeah. Yeah.
so, and I know this from one of our chiefs that he hated the Bearcat. That's
Mm.
the armored vehicle, and it's a rescue vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a tank. We don't have machine guns sticking out of the sides,
Mm-hmm.
nothing
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also moving cover. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it can be utilized for, safe transport. There's 100 different reasons to have it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I had a barricaded subject, gonna kill mom, blah, 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 blah. And it was one of the handful of times that I actually called the TAC unit, and I'm like, yeah, this is a TAC setup.
Mm-hmm.
So I called. The chief would show up to every TAC setup like that, not to warrant service, but something like that in the community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 4 o'clock in the morning and you're breaching a door.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the middle of the day in like
Yeah.
nice town USA. And my captain came out and she's like, and she never came out to scenes, never. And she's out there and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, hi, ma'am, what are we doing? And she's like, "Oh, chief called. He's not going to like this." And I'm like, why? The Bearcat. And I'm like, and I said, it has a very specific purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had to explain it to her. And I'm just like, and he comes out and right away he's like, yeah, the Bearcat. And I'm like, why do you have such a boner for the Bearcat? I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah.
so full of politics. I mean, we had another chief
Yeah.
that ordered the SWAT team to lay down cover fire. And they're all
Wow.
looking at each other like, we don't do that.
No.
It's like we just don't shoot
Kidding?
blindly into a house.
No.
But he got
Ooh, you talk
excited.
about a lawsuit. Oh,
Uh, I know,
like
but
the lawyer in me is like, oh no, 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 no. Um, yeah, I think 20 years ago we were privy to a different time in terms of public opinion on law enforcement, thankfully. And then also we did one of those units too, one of those armored vehicles as well. I mean, again, coming back to like a rifle round won't go through steel, and those are steel cars. And I remember one time, after I got out of the sheriff's office, I went to law school and I was working as an attorney. I didn't never really talked about my time at the sheriff's office. To me, it always felt like I was patting myself on the back. Now, certainly, I will talk about it ad nauseum because it promotes my business, and I want people to
sure.
know they can trust me in what I do. But I remember one time I was at a networking luncheon for attorneys, and one of the ladies started going off on, in Houston, Texas, we have our school districts. Some of them are huge. I mean, we have some of the biggest school districts in the country, and that they have their own police departments. And that within that, they have some tactical response teams and they have the
Mhm.
armored vehicles. And she's like, did you see that they pulled up this machinery to the school? And can you believe it? And I would like, I don't care what you say, like I'm keeping my mouth shut. And I think finally I was like, that's it. I was like, yeah. Do you remember this thing called Columbine? Do you remember that? Do you remember how many kids died in that school and like all the shooting and they needed to get in faster? And like, granted that's not a very good example because one of the things that people learned from Columbine situation is that you just got to go into the school. Do not
Absolutely.
wait for the
Yeah.
practical team to show up. Just go,
Right.
go, go. And that's what everybody started doing, including us, is they trained all officers, all deputies
Yep.
on active shooters so that you just go in. And but obviously is that, yeah, you want them to have machine guns and you want them to be able to fight back. Like, are you kidding me? And I think I said to her, what if that was your kid at school? And there's a guy shooting a machine gun in the school. What do you want the cops to show up with? Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, stop. So yeah, I'm going to be the opposite side of that for a lot of people. But I mean, also being on SWAT team is that we would have conversations around because a lot of that is mental training. And we would have what if we would sit in a
Sure.
classroom and have what if conversations around what if it's a hostage situation and a negotiator talks the guy and like we get him a pizza and he talks the guy into coming out to get the pizza himself and he turns around and his back's facing you and he's about to walk inside. What do you do? The
Yep.
question is, do you shoot him in the back? And I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And I'll get people cringe when I tell them that, like, oh, really? Like, why don't you just shoot him in the knee? Like, okay, I'm not going to have that conversation. But then also, what if that's your mom in there? What if that's your daughter in there? What if that's your husband, your kid, I don't care, somebody you love? You want me to let that hostage taker go back inside? You think I'm going to be able they've already taken hostages and are attempting to kill them. Like, so yes, the answer is you shoot them as soon as you can. You take, hopefully, obviously you can take them out some other way.
Yeah,
Because
you stop the
cops
threat.
don't actually want to kill people.
No, not at all.
Newsflash.
And most SWAT teams, including ours, have saved a whole lot more people than
Oh,
they've ever,
so many
taken a
more.
life. A
So many
whole
more.
bunch. But you never hear about that.
Yeah, you don't ever hear that.
But
Yeah.
this comes back from the old cowboy days almost. You don't shoot a man in the back. You
Right.
just that just spurred a memory in my brain. We were shorthanded, big surprise. And there was a vet that had really bad PTSD. He took his pistol and he pointed at his girlfriend and he's like, I'm not going to shoot you, but I'm going to shoot myself. So he hops in his pickup truck and he goes. And it's like, oh God. So my partner is in his squad. I'm in mine. And he's like, he gets up on the air and he's like, yeah, I'm following that truck right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty close. He had him stopped. I busted out. We had Smith and Wesson patrol rifles. I had some really good cover. And I'm like, I don't want to shoot this guy.
No.
But where does he stop him? In front of a school. And I'm like, oh, so now this guy is clearly saying he's going to kill people and himself. And I'm like, I don't want to hurt this guy.
No.
But,
For
it's like
so
he
many
got out of
reasons,
the car,
right.
he had the gun, I had the safety off and my finger started transitioning, to the trigger. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to
Please
do
no,
this.
please no, please no,
But
please, right.
I had to look out for my partner. And obviously there's a
In the
school full of
school. Yeah.
kids. And I'm like, oh God, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I said, if he takes one step, here or there, I'm gonna have to take him out.
Yeah.
Thank God, my partner was really good at talking to people and yeah, he put it down and no
Oh, that's
problems.
great. Yeah. But so close. I mean, so many, you and I could
Oh
go back
God.
like,
Yep.
oh, I remember this, like so
Oh,
many times that people were so close to being killed.
yes.
Um,
Uh,
yeah.
divine
Yeah.
intervention, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, but
Whatever it
I'm all
is.
for it. Yeah.
I know.
That's
I
for
know.
sure. So, you're doing all this high speed stuff. When did stuff start going bad for you at work? When did things start turning?
The whole time I was on SWAT team, which is a lot of overlap with the SWAT guys and the narcotics guys, because
Sure.
most of the narcotics guys, both the undercover and the uniform side, were also on SWAT team.
Okay.
And a lot of what we did, just because a lot of what SWAT did was narcotics related. I mean, we were all there. Everybody that was on the uniform side would show up for us. Obviously, when we were doing anything narcotics related, like the whole narcotics unit would be there.
Yeah.
So what it turned into is that just at first and I knew I was the only female on the team. I mean, I went in knowing like I expected things to be challenging. But what over time became difficult was that I was just always in trouble. I was always written up for something. Every mistake I made, I'd get a letter in my file, or I'd get another 6-month probation, or I would just do this or that. And I just started recognizing, at first it's like, you're right, I made a mistake, I'll do better. And then like, okay, you're right, I made a mistake, I'll do better. Yes,
Like
sir, I'll do better.
what kind of things?
Like one time, again, I was the bread van girl, and we would park our SWAT equipment, that van with all the SWAT extras,
Mhm.
like the ammunition, the flashbangs, the grenades, all in this
Sure.
van, and it's like a bread van, in our secure lot, and it's like literally right at the back of the sheriff's office, and I forgot to lock one of the doors, and so I got written up for that. And there was another guy with me, and like, I was probably my fault, but then I remember at the time thinking like, but it could have been, so I was like, you know what, it's me. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Well, they wrote me up for it. Another time, I I had something else to do. Oh, we had again, inside the secure sheriff's office, we had a SWAT briefing. We were all geared up because I was
Yeah.
getting ready to do whatever, and I left my MP5 on the table while I went to go use the bathroom or something.
Oh.
I come back and they wrote me up for that. Um, One time I actually left my door open accidentally in the parking lot while everybody was in the parking lot. And I come back and my lieutenant from narcotics and the SWAT commanders parked right behind my car. And yes, obviously that's a mistake. I certainly never did it again, but I got written up for that. And and then the counter to it is one of my sergeants who had the biggest problem with me, we just did not work well together. And he was always giving me a hard time. We were doing an active shooter in a school training in the
Yeah.
summertime at one of the high schools, and so there was nobody around. And he was one of the captains on the SWAT team, and he's a sergeant, so he had even more equipment than I had in my car. We come out, we took a break, I walk out of the school and his car is wide open, like the windows down, the trunk's open. I'm talking ammunition, flashbangs, grenades, AR-15, MP5,
Yeah.
Benelli shotgun, all that. And nobody said a word to him. Like, and this was after I was starting to get like, okay, I made a mistake. Okay, I made a mistake. Okay. And then finally I'm like, okay, like Jesus, like I can't possibly be making mistakes every day. Like I would literally go to work thinking, just leave me alone today. Just leave me alone today. Just let me do my job for a day. Don't just leave me alone. And then he did that. But I mean, I could give other examples, but that just it got to the point where I was like, okay, I mean, enough is enough. Like, I get it. I'm making a mistake. Like one time we were narcotics unit again, my lieutenant was the SWAT commander, and I was really sick. Like I had like strep and the flu. I mean, I was
Yeah.
just awful. And I was like, okay, I gotta go to the doctor in the morning. And he's like, okay, well, before you go home, then make sure you set up this car we're going to use tomorrow for this deal we're going to do. So, like, we have different cars we would use, and we got
Sure.
to set up the bugs and the camera and the whatever. Well, we had a tech guy for our narcotics unit that never left the station. I mean, never went with us, but he did all the tech. He would collect the tapes, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, the next morning I was just so sick and I went to the doctor and I didn't get the car set up. I get back the next day and he'd already written me up for it. Like it already written me up. And then the guy, our tech guy was like, it's no big deal. I set the car up. I'm like, anyway, I got written up for it. One time I made a mistake. I don't remember what it was. And when, instead of letting me go home when the shift was over 10, 12, 11, 12, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was for narcotics, depending on what we were doing, they got mad at me for something. And he's like, okay, well, you can't go home. You got to take this RV and go wash it. And well, the big giant RV that we had confiscated from somebody, drive it out of the secure compound. The only place that was big enough to wash it was way out in the country, which I didn't
Yeah.
care. I wasn't scared to go. But I mean, I'd never driven an RV before in my life. So sure enough, I'm pulling out of the secure lot and I nick the tail light, which breaks the tail light a little bit.
Mm.
I get into the sheriff's office the next day and the captain calls me and he's like, what is this crash report that I see? I'm like, what? Like, so they wrote me up gave me a crash report and had already sent it to the captain. And he called me and he's like, what? And I was like, he's like, well, why were you driving the RV at 2 o'clock in the morning? And part of me was like, okay, I don't want to tattletale. I can handle this. And
Right.
I was like, well, I got in trouble and they made me go. But I was like, I'm at least just going to say, like, I won't go into the deal. I was like, they made me do it. He's like, why? I was like, well, I guess I don't remember what I said. Like, I don't think I even wanted to say, well, I was in trouble. I just wanted to, like, again, just leave me alone. Let me do my job. Like, I want to be in narcotics unit. I want to be on SWAT team. Just let me do the job. Just stop it. And at that point, he actually told them, like, you guys got to ease up a little bit. Like, this is too much. Like, why do I see this stuff about Bridget all the time?
Right.
And then, shortly after that, it was right after that when the incident with my sergeant leaving his car open and the hood with all of his stuff. And I finally went to the SWAT team commander, my lieutenant of narcotics, and said, look, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm just asking for equal treatment. And he's like,
Right.
what are you talking about? And so I really didn't want to say who it was. I was trying to make it as generic as possible. But I was like, look, this is what I saw. Like, if this would have been me, you would have eaten me alive. You would have written me up. I would have gotten 500 mountain climbers, like all of it. And he's like, I don't understand what you're saying. I said, I just, just equal treatment. Like if I'm going to get in trouble for it, I'm not asking for somebody to get in trouble. And if you make a mistake, you should be called out for it. I said, but like, it shouldn't be just my mistakes. And he said to me, you shouldn't make trouble for yourself where there's not any. And I said, well, not really sure what that means. And I'm already in trouble all the time. So he said, well, you shouldn't make trouble for yourself where there's not any. Well, a week later, I had already been doing undercover buys. And so I'm leading to the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
I had been doing undercover buys in a mobile home out in the freaking country where my backup wasn't a block away
Yeah.
because it had been
That,
discovered. So
right.
I'm
Exactly.
buying drugs, and I can't remember if it was crack or cocaine, probably crack, from this house multiple times with a big black dude with a rifle sitting right next to him every time. And I had to do it 3 times. I get the search warrant. I coordinate. I brief the SWAT team. Of course, I drive the bread van to the detail because I'm never allowed to be in the armored vehicle with the entry team. I found out a little bit after that. One of the guys told me that he was in the armored van. He says, yeah, they were calling you a snitch behind your back the whole time to that search warrant. I said, what are you talking about? So turns out my lieutenant the SWAT team commander went to my team and told them that I was trying to rat out one of my own teammates for doing something wrong. When all I was doing was trying, this was like 2.5 years in. And
Yeah.
when I found it out, I left, was at this thing with them, and I had to leave this event we were at. I was so upset, crying so hard I had to pull over the side of the road. And it's when it really hit me, like I was never going to be able to do anything that would matter. Nothing, I was never going to be an operator in their mind. And I was crushed. And it was then that Monday I went into the captain's office and I said, I'm effing done. Like, I'm done. I said, you can move me right now, or I can talk to you all about it. And he would have listened to me. I
Yeah.
mean, but he said, you got it, day shift starting tomorrow, or whatever. So
Right.
it sucked bad, like bad, bad.
How did
And
you take care of yourself when all this was going on? That's a ton of stress.
I exercised because I always did that, but I didn't
Sure.
recognize exercise as being the mental health tool that I truly know that it is now. But definitely the exercise helped me. I just trained even harder. I was doing sprint triathlons at the time. I just would ride longer or swim harder or run harder. That definitely helped, but none of this, like, I just felt like nobody knew what I was going through, that I felt completely alone, like nobody, and even though my captain was trying to help, like there was nobody, and I didn't want to quit the job, and I didn't know what to do with the rest of my life because I was going to be a police officer or law enforcement for the rest of
Yeah.
my professional career, and so yeah, I quit. I quit all of it, and it made me so mad. I just wanted to be like, "Fuck all of you, like, you want it back, you can have it back." Like, it was, it's going 100 miles an hour to zero in one day. I mean, it was bad, and I never talked about it. And so that's what I say. What I do in my professional life now is I am an attorney, and I help people. I specifically crafted my law firm to help me back then. Like, somebody said, "What do you want your friend? What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I just know." Finally, I said, "You know what? I wish I could give me to the person that I was back then. I wish I could help me in the way that I needed it then, because I understand what it's like. I know you just want answers." Most people that are my clients for my firm, they don't want to sue a department. They just, like me. I just wanted to do my job. Like, can I just
Yeah.
make them stop? And
Now,
that's all I wanted. So I
be-
didn't know what to do, and it took me a long time to get over it. A long
before
time.
you resigned, did you
Mhm.
think of taking any kind of legal action against these people or just go into a different department?
No, no other department, because I literally was like, because I was in the narcotics unit, I got to meet a lot of federal investigators from all different parts of like, I've learned that, I mean, like every federal department, like especially on the legislative side of things, almost all of them have their own like investigative or law enforcement arm somehow. So I knew there
Yeah.
would be lots of different ways to get, like, it's not just FBI or DEA. You can work for the Department of Interior, you can work for the US Postal Service. I mean, I met
Right.
lots
Yeah.
of investigators with the Postal Service. And what I realized was that I mean, and no offense to any guys or the federales out there, is that I realized that the egos or the issues that I was dealing with were just going to be bigger egos at the federal level.
Mm.
And I decided that I just didn't want to fight that battle. I'm going to be me. I'm always going to want to do more. I'm always going to want to do the SWAT or the challenging position, or that I'm going to get the promotion. And I just decided, like, there's no way I'm going to fight against this for the rest of my career. And I decided, so no other, I just like no law enforcement. It was hard. It was so hard. Because I loved it so much
Yeah.
until I didn't. And had no idea what I would do. I mean, left the sheriff's office. I mean, leaving and finally it's like, well, I guess I could go to law school, but I have no idea what I want to do. And it's just, can't be having a law degree can't be a bad thing. Um, and so I don't really feel like even becoming a lawyer was a choice the way that law enforcement was for me originally. And even as an attorney, I hated that for 13 years until finally figured out I need to just work for myself and do what I'm doing now.
Okay.
So I finally feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do in life. But I also had to go through all of that to be able to do what I do now. As you age, you realize like everything happens for a reason, or that you learn something very specific from every experience,
Right.
and that there's always some value in all of that. And also, I refuse to be a Debbie Downer in life. I choose to be positive Polly, and sometimes I'm not, but tomorrow's a new day. The sun will always rise. And so, um, I guess that's the way I make lemonade out of lemons. And so that's what I
S-
do now. But yeah, I didn't ever, to answer your question, I didn't ever decide to report it then. And that is one of my only regret in any of that is never officially reporting it because I was given the opportunity twice, and I could give you a lot more examples, but basically
Yeah.
my captain pulled me in one time and specifically said, Bridget, is there anything you want to tell me? And then the head or the second in command at the district attorney's office requested a meeting with me to ask me the same thing
Oh,
because
geez.
the ADA that I was dealing with our search warrants was such a piece of crap. Um, literally screamed at me in the office one day to the point where all the secretaries ended up reporting him. And my captain knew about it. So at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm getting like a super secret meeting with the assistant, like second in command at the district attorney's
Yeah.
office, asking me if there's anything I'd like to report. And then my captain saying, Bridget, is there anything you'd like to talk about? And I was like, no, because I refuse to be that girl. So now I spend so much of my time saying, no, you need to be that girl or you need to be
Right.
that guy because number one, I promise you'll suffer for it if you don't report it like I did. And I mean, suffer, you suffer internally. It in so many ways, it's different for everyone. I suffered for it for years because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. And not shame in the sense that like, I'll tell you my story, but like I suffered with like, I never even wanted to tell you I was a deputy sheriff or I was on SWAT because I would say, well, it means nothing. Like what was it? It turned out to mean nothing. And so I didn't even want to talk about it.
Mm.
And I felt like I had these very distinct sections of my life that I'm like, yeah, but that section means nothing. And of course, that's not true. Um, but it took me a long time to realize that, especially now, like I did that. And now I'm an attorney and that I can put that all together to be very valuable to people. Um, but I mean, it was, yeah, I just didn't want to be remembered as that girl. And then turns out that's how I was remembered anyway. I mean, I found out months later that they were spreading rumors about me that even though I quit, that I left the narcotics unit and the SWAT team voluntarily, that I left to go to law school, that they were spreading a rumor that I was forced to leave or that I was fired because I got caught lying and covering up for a snitch, one of
Uh,
our confidential informants,
okay.
which I would never do ever. And so I realized like nothing I did ever mattered to them anyway. And so I should have reported it. I should have put them on notice. How can your department fix something if you don't tell them what they're doing wrong? And people will think, yeah, but they see it. Yeah, but they know. Like, no, they don't. And until you put them on notice of it, they're going to do jack shit about it. So bleep me out if you need to. But
No,
that's what I
no,
tell people
it's
all the
okay.
time is you must report it because if not, you'll suffer like I did or worse. I mean, I have clients or I've met people who have attempted suicide over this. There was a girl at the Austin Police Department who suffered some of the same things, and she just committed suicide and leaving two kids
Oh,
behind because some of the
God.
same stuff that I went through. I
Yeah.
mean, it can spiral out of control. So I literally am like begging anyone listening, if you are facing any of this kind of stuff at work, do not suffer in silence. You must say something and at least let me or somebody like me help because I really want to help.
So, life after law enforcement, I was going to segue to that, and
Yep.
we're there now.
Yep.
You know, how much time lapsed between the time that you resigned from the PD to going into law school?
Um, mm, I I left the sheriff's office in December of 2004. Um, and then I started law school in August of 2005. But I would say at
Okay.
the end of the summer of 2004 is when I knew um like I needed to get out.
Yeah.
And so then you have to study for the LSAT and take the LSAT. So
Right.
that
Right.
fall is when I took the LSAT
Mm,
and um I think so. I kind of, I didn't want to, but I could see it. And then it was the fall of 2004 was when I was in patrol. I left narcotics and SWAT.
yeah.
And I really can't remember if that was like 2 months or 4 months,
Sure.
but I left in December of 2004 and then started law school in August of 2005. So
Okay.
not that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so it's kind of like the boiling frog thing. You don't realize how toxic something is
Mhm.
until
Oh
you
yeah.
got some space and you were stepped away from it. Was it like a light bulb moment? Like, holy shit, this was really
No, it
bad.
took a while. I remember it was my first semester of law school, and one of the guys I worked with in the narcotics unit, who sadly dropped dead on a run like the next spring.
Wow.
I know. He got assigned to a task force, the FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement Task Force. And they just so happened to be Miami. He knew I was in law school in Miami. So we met up for dinner and he told me some stories. Like he's the only one that ever assigned me to be on an entry team.
Okay.
And he told me that after he did that, they just berated him, like just publicly amongst all the other team members, like berated him for putting me on an entry team. And so it took a while for me to realize truly how bad it was and that I truly had no chance of ever succeeding. Also, I am not, patience is not one of my virtues. It certainly wasn't then. And so, what would it have been like after 5 years? I don't know. I had the luxury of having the same supportive sheriff the whole time I was there. But shortly after I left, the new sheriff came in and it was a female, which you would think would have been great. But what I learned over time is that she was not great for the department.
Mm,
She changed things up a lot. She changed things she shouldn't have changed that caused way too much disruption. Their numbers went through went to crap. So, who knows what it would have been like if I'd stuck it out? Who knows if she would have even, like, I think she downgraded all the special unit teams. I mean, who knows what would have happened?
right.
I mean, certainly part of me at first thought, well, maybe I should have just stuck it out, just kept my head down and suffered through it. But I'm just not that person. I'm just not the suffering type. So I'm a firm believer that like anything's possible. It's never too late. Like, I mean, when I started law school, I mean, this is still very young in hindsight, but I mean, I was 30 years old when I started law school. Um, and I didn't care that everybody else was 21 and 22. And my current age, I think that's all super young and not much of a difference. But anyway, yeah, it took a while for me to kind of really unravel it, let go of it, not be mad about it. I mean, it took me 13 years or more before I even wanted to talk to anybody that I had worked
Okay.
with. Because I was
So
just mad. I was mad at all of them.
when you started out your law career, what did that look like? Like what kind of law were you practicing?
Oh, well, I moved to Texas for my now husband. So I got a job. I just needed to get a job and start paying back law school. I got a job doing asbestos litigation, which is
Okay.
those mesothelioma commercials you see all the
Yep.
time. And when I got that job, I didn't even know what asbestos was. I just wanted a job.
Sure.
And then I did that for almost 13 years. I kept trying to get out of it because I didn't like it. I don't like the litigation world.
Mm,
And that being said, I still work within the litigation world and I know all about it. And again, I think that contributes to how I provide value to my clients. Even if their issues never evolve into litigation, you just always have to keep an eye on what that would look like and how you need to preserve the issues if it goes to trial. But yeah, I did asbestos litigation for about 13 years, kept trying to get out. And then finally, I'm a firm believer that it's never too late. And finally, I decided, screw this. I didn't really want to work for myself. I wanted somebody else to give me a nice, comfy paycheck.
yeah.
But realized that what I really want to do and the value that I can provide doesn't really exist anywhere else. So I just finally like quit the law firm life, um, let go of what I call the golden handcuffs, with a nice cushy paycheck and decided to build this business on my own to be able to help in this way for cops across the country.
All right. Can you explain what you're doing now?
So yes, my law firm is called Lady Law Shield, and I specialize in helping law enforcement officers, and I have some non-law enforcement clients, but my specialty is law enforcement officers that have employment-related matters at work. So harassment, discrimination, retaliation, hostile work environment. I also help cops try and figure out if there's a way to get their names off of a Brady Giglio list. That's complicated and long discussion, but um, and not many attorneys across the country will help with that. So I help you find a solution. I help you come up with a plan. I help you figure out what you're supposed to say, how to fight back, and support you through when you report what your issues are. And I know because I know it's hard to do that, and I help you along the way. I do it for you in most of the time, but sometimes like I offer like the entry level to work with me is what I call just a consultation where you pay me to review everything there is to review, like their story, anything in writing, the policies that apply to the issue you're facing. And then I tell you what I think your problem is. I tell you what I think you can do about it. And then you can go off on your merry way and do something or not,
Yeah.
or that you can hire me to start doing that for you. So yeah, I specifically help law enforcement officers face the kind of crap that I faced so that you don't quit, because I don't want you to quit. We need you on the job. And come up with a plan, because I think when you face these kind of issues at work, it is all consuming and it's distracting you from life and the job. And maybe you're going to make a decision at home or at work that you don't need to make. And I don't want you to do that. So I want to help you solve this issue. I consider what I do to be a wellness tool, because if I can help you worry less about this issue, then you can focus on what you need to be doing to have a healthy, a healthy wellness routine to
Sure.
counteract what the job is doing to you already, and to be happy. That's what I want to help with that.
That makes total sense. What do
Hmm.
you what do you tell somebody who is looking for, a quick buck? We all know the cops out there. There isn't a lot of them, but there are some
Hmm.
scamsters.
Hmm.
You know, I could close my eyes and see them. It's like, oh my God, I saw a dead body once. I can never go back to work. Or,
Yeah.
my boss yelled at me and, it's discrimination because of X, Y, and Z. No, it's
No,
because you suck.
right. Yeah.
What do you tell them?
I have gotten interesting calls. I remember one of them was a guy who'd been at like 4 departments in 2 years, and he wanted me to sue his chief for something. I was like, first of all, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, he's like, oh, I can sue him for this and this and this. I was like, I am not familiar with the statute. And this was in Texas.
Yeah.
I don't know what statute you're talking about. I said, and I'm gonna tell you right now, you being at 4 jobs in 2 years is suspect.
Yes.
I talked with a girl today who's EMS, and she wanted to sue her department because, well, she had made a complaint against her supervisor who treated her unfairly. And I mean, just having a jerk boss or having somebody that screams at you when they shouldn't scream at you does not mean you can file a lawsuit. You cannot file with the EEOC. They're not going to take that claim.
Okay.
She complained. They separated the two, and she felt like it was retaliation that they separated the two, like they put them on different shifts. And then I'm like, nope, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed
Right.
to provide a solution.
Oh yeah.
And they did. And she's like, well, I feel it was retaliated that they moved me and not her. I said, but I mean, do you feel like it's because of your race or your gender? She's like, no, I just think they were retaliating against me. Like, no,
Mm.
that I said, I can't help you. And so definitely I have some people who will say, like, they'll have a valid claim, like, I can help you with this. Oh, and I think I need $1 million. Okay, you're not going to get $1 million, and let me tell you all the reasons why you won't get $1 million from a
Okay.
public entity, like a governmental entity. Like, they're not
Right.
going to do that. And so sometimes it's that I'll say you have no claim, and here's why. Um, a lot of times is that they have a valid claim or a valid issue, but I just need to talk them down on how mad they are about it, and
Mhm.
make it more realistic. And I'm usually able to do that. I mean, I have a client right now where he's wanting to file suit, and I said, okay, let's just have one more chat about this, because I really need you to realize that you're going to spend money on a lawsuit, and you probably won't get any money from your department. Like, are you willing to do that? And sometimes they're like, yeah, screw it. I just want to make a point of it. Like, okay, it's your money. Um, but I generally try and talk anybody out of that. Most times it's that you want some type of resolution. Okay, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that you'll never get any money. I'm not saying that there aren't claims that justify a punitive damage award. And actually, I should do that. You can't really get punitives from a governmental entity, but a big verdict, like settlement
Sure.
from an agency, a department, city, whatever, does happen, happens all the time, unfortunately, because people say and do the stupidest things all the time. But most of the time, that's not what you're coming to me with. And you just want to be able to, like my situation, just like, what can I say? What can I do? Who should I go to make sure they're aware that this is happening, I just want it to stop. I just want to, they demoted me. I want my job back.
Yeah.
Maybe you want a little bit of back pay. I mean, I have a client right now. She wants about 6 months of back pay because they demoted her and they shouldn't have. Like, I think that's reasonable. I think they should pay her the back pay. And
Sure.
but anyway, I thankfully, I don't think I don't encounter that many people really trying to get something, a lot of money that's based on nothing. But the example I gave, I mean, it happens. But I turn those down, and almost all attorneys I know turn them down quickly. In fact, most employment law attorneys I know would turn down most of the cases I take, because they're looking at it only from will I make money off of this in a lawsuit?
Oh, okay.
And it's really hard to win a lot of money against the government.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Now,
yeah.
so somebody's out there listening to the show, and they're contemplating taking legal action against their department, because they think they're being treated unfairly, discrimination, harassment, whatever. What's your advice to them And what are some of the common errors you see in this space?
My advice to you are, this is not, is it self-serving? Sure. Because if you want to hire me, of course I get paid for it. But my advice to you, number one, is hire somebody to help you with it. And because the errors that I see people make are they make a claim, it's a poorly worded claim, you're too emotional about it, you
Mm,
don't provide the information you need to provide. Also, all you cops out there think that you know all the law. You don't. You don't know civil litigation. You don't know employment law. You don't know the words you need to say, the triggers you need to put in there. And please don't think that you know how to do this for yourself, because while you might be a highly articulate person, and not all cops are, you still want somebody who can articulate it with the right words. So hire somebody from the very beginning, preferably before you even report it, because they can help you craft your complaint in the right way. The
mm.
second thing I'll tell people is if anything I'm saying to you is hitting home or triggering you in any way, you must start writing your story down. And some people I had a client who oh, I need your timeline of events. That's the first thing I asked for. Okay, I already have it. Well, she sent me all the notes she had taken in her phone over 4 years, and it was just a run-on mess. Okay, don't send me that. You need to put this in a sequence that makes sense with
Right.
commas and paragraphs and names and dates. But you need to write this down: names, dates, incidents, like a police report. This is what happened. This who said it. Here's what the weather was like. You would put, is it night or it's day? Put the pertinent facts. So those are the two main things I would say. You've got to write it down. The third one I would say, which I still recommend the other two first, is you have to report this to your department no matter what. If you go to the EEOC, if it ultimately results, especially if it ultimately evolves into a lawsuit, it will matter in your case if you reported it and put your agency on notice of it. If you never do that, your likelihood of success in a lawsuit is really low.
Okay.
So no matter what, as crappy as it will be, you have to report it. But again, that's why you need to go back to number one. Hire somebody who help you, because they're going to be able to help guide you through and support you through, especially for somebody like me who's been in your shoes. I'm going to be able to support you through what this is like when you report it, and if maybe probably it gets bad after you report it, but you have to report it. There's no way around that.
So get a professional, get
Yep.
an opinion. You have to report it. And if you want to go
Mhm.
forward, some of the things that may or may not happen is, you know, like you said before, I'm going to be seen as a snitch. Maybe
Mhm.
my work life isn't going to be all sunshine and roses for
Mhm.
a very long time, or it may never go back to where I wanted it
Mhm.
to be.
Mhm.
Or I want to be a police officer or a firefighter or whatever, in the town next to
Yeah.
this or whatever.
Yeah.
They're going to know about it, right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
people say if you report something internally, that's not the same as filing a lawsuit. If you file an application, you're going to have to put that there's an active lawsuit. But and that yes, that will impact you getting another job, because nobody's going to want to hire somebody that's involved in an active lawsuit. However, we're just reporting something in your department doesn't mean that's going to create an issue for you somewhere else. But just giving you my example, people will say, "Well, I don't report it because I don't want to get kicked off the SWAT team, or I don't want to get kicked off the narcotics unit." I was off the narcotics unit SWAT team anyway. Like,
yeah,
I ended up quitting because I just couldn't see a way out of it that would work, that it would yeah, I could have gone to the warrants unit or whatever, but I ended up quitting. Okay, I'm going to go to warrants because I just can't take the narcotics and the SWAT guys anymore. I mean, no matter what, I wasn't on narcotics and SWAT, because whether you quit or you decide to transfer, but also there's not a single department in this country that's fully staffed.
yeah,
So
that's
you
very
can
true.
always
Yeah,
get another job. Always. Now, would I have been able to get SWAT team at Gainesville Police Department if I left the sheriff's office? I don't know, maybe someday. I mean, literally the facts were very specific to me getting SWAT team and getting on the narcotics unit when I did it so early in my career. Maybe I would have had to wait 5 years at GPD to get back on SWAT or whatever. But if that's what I really wanted to do, I could have gotten there. And if it was a better environment, then it was worth it. So I think there's several things, don't suffer where you are. There's no need for it. I mean, that's one thing that I've talked about with other, many people across the country in law enforcement is there's not a single agency that's fully staffed. You can get another job. Um, and you can do that without reporting it. Just remember, I didn't report it either, and I suffered for it. in silence for a long time. So there's still a lot of value in reporting it, even if you decide to move on like I did. I still regret not reporting it,
Yeah.
no matter what.
And I think one other thing that really hit home with me is documentation.
Yep.
You know, I went through an ugly divorce about 12
Mm,
years ago,
mm,
and it was over 2 years, this
yeah.
divorce.
Hmm.
And my attorney is like, I want you to document everything that your crazy soon to be ex-wife
Hmm.
is saying, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I'm 10 steps ahead of you. I kept a steno pad
Yeah.
with me everywhere on day,
Well,
date, and
I
time,
girl, yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And
The
he said, you're making this so easy for me. And he said, it wouldn't be if you weren't doing all this work.
Yeah.
You got to be your own advocate.
The a girl that I talked to was not my client. I wish I would have helped her. She did have an attorney. She ended up suing her department. It was horrific for her over 2 years. She ended up attempting suicide 4 times
Oh,
over the
God.
amount of time that she was suffering in her department, filing a complaint, suing them. She ultimately settled. And I don't know all the facts. I haven't read through the very voluminous records that she's already shared with me. I haven't read through all of them yet. But she settled, won a settlement. And I 100% believe the reason why she got that is because she had a very documented timeline of every issue she had.
Yep.
Here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you do like ask for something and they tell you no, or like all the time they say no about something, you must ask why. Force them to give you an answer.
Mm,
She would ask for training. No. Why? Well, it's just not what we do. Why? Well, just not why. And then they were so inconsistent in their reasons, and it was
mm,
so blatant that was just like, you get on my nerves. It's just you, but she's the only female. Like the guy, and you could give all these examples about how these guys, again, this is a male female, but I mean, I have 50% of my clients are men. And so this is not exclusive to just male versus female.
sure.
But like the ones who have the most success is you have a very succinct timeline of events that I need to see, but also of exchanges within your department that you must document exchange if you're asking for things and they're telling you no, why. If like, we're not going to let you go out on light duty, why? No, we're going to fire you because you're on light duty and you can't come back, and we can fire you after 12 months. And that's a thing in Texas. Like,
Same in Wisconsin. Yeah,
but why are you pushing me out when you let this other guy stay on for 18 months?
correct.
Like, why? Like, for even if they never give you an answer, you have this trail that says, well, I don't know why, I'm just going to do it to you. And so that's helpful. So you must ask why. And, worst case scenario, they won't give you an answer, but that's still an answer, and that's still beneficial to any kind
Right.
of complaint you might need to make in the future.
So, what advice? We're going to start winding down here. What
Yeah.
advice do you have for cops tiptoeing through the minefield that is police work today? From
Oof.
your point of view, what is your advice?
I would say no matter what the issue is, just to not suffer in silence. You're never alone. No matter what you're going through on the job, there is somebody else out there that's going through what you're going through. And please say something to somebody. And whether that's in a Facebook group and you post anonymously, whether it's an employee assistance program that you trust somebody. Like I personally never would have spoken to my union rep about any of my issues because I didn't trust him.
Mm,
But I wish I would have had, and then, no, and Facebook, again, dating myself. Facebook wasn't a thing then.
no,
Certainly all the Facebook groups you have now weren't a thing, but participate in something with somebody somehow. I always tell people you should get a therapist. Like, get a therapist. There is no pride reason. There's no ego reason that should stop you from getting it. You don't even have to tell anybody you're doing it. You don't even have to use your employee benefits program to do it. You can find a therapist that you can afford. I promise. Because I have a therapist that I pay monthly until we meet our deductible, and I can afford the monthly payment.
yeah,
And I'm not going through the same things I'm going through then, but I still go talk to a therapist regularly because it makes me a happier person, a happier mom, a happier wife, a happier friend, just all of it.
sure.
So just my what I would say is, I don't care whether you're starting or you're in it, like, please don't suffer in silence for any issue at any point in your career, because the job is going to affect you. I promise. I've had so many veteran guys say, I didn't think I had a problem until I did. I
Yep.
didn't think I had anger issues until I realized I was mad at everybody all the time and my wife was about to leave me. Or a 30-year firefighter veteran who volunteered to fight wildfires in the West. I mean, just dangerous jobs. And was on the phone with me in tears one day because
Mm,
his chief was forcing him out. And he's like, I just didn't know that my career would end this way. you're never alone. You must talk to somebody about something. If you're obsessing about it and it's on your mind all the time, you're past the point of talking to somebody about it. So please, whether you need help for a legal problem or just anything else, just talk to somebody. That's what I say.
Excellent. Well, let's wrap this up. What's next for you? You're helping out first responders, doing your thing. Is there a book in your future, a podcast? I mean, what
Oh,
are we looking at?
yeah. I have thought about the podcast thing, and I just, in a perfect world when I have like 8 assistants so that I can get all that done. I'm a mom of 3 kids. My kids are young. I started a little bit later, given like, I said I law school and all that. I didn't start having kids till after law school. So I have currently a 12 and 11 and 6-year-old.
Well,
So,
that'll keep you busy.
I'm very rigid about my time so that I'm
Sure.
present for them. So, yeah, a book would be cool. But again, in my supposed, I hear about this thing called free time. But no, my priority is my family and my kids. I love my business. I love growing my business, but I'm a firm believer that I think work fits into your life. It is not my life. And so I try to refocus on that a lot. I also really like yoga, so I do yoga.
I think that's
Um,
a very healthy attitude.
mhm.
In first responderville, you have all these men and women that they just love the job. Their identity is completely attached to the job. And then they get all butthurt when the job doesn't love them back.
Yeah.
Or, it's time to leave for whatever reason. And they're like lost puppies in an alley in the middle of the night. They just don't know what to do.
Yeah, you should never make law enforcement your world. And I think it's very hard to not live that way when you first get in
Right.
it.
Absolutely.
But law enforcement is not your world. Yeah, that uniform and that gun is not your identity. It's not. And it's so hard. I did it. I was 100%
Oh,
in it.
absolutely.
And that's also a big mistake I made at the time. Like I should have made sure that I spent more time with non-cop friends. Like
Yeah.
I say, like what social activities or what church group were you in before you ever became a cop? What things have you let filter away once you became a cop, and especially once you're about 5 years in? Like take a look back and see, who should I go start hanging out with again? I need to go back to that church group. I need to go back to that softball group, or just whatever it is, and go
Whatever.
back to
Yeah,
it. Like
absolutely.
and take your freaking vacation time. Are you freaking kidding me? I know
Yeah,
sometimes you can't because you're understaffed and they won't let you, but take the days they give you if you can take them. Oh my God. My guys used to say to me, boy, you take off a lot. I mean, I was taking off for like a sprint triathlon or something. Like I wasn't going, I did take a few trips. I'm like, I get the time off. Like, shame on you for not taking it. Like,
right.
screw you, you're dumb. But um, anyway, but yeah,
Yeah, I
all those
get it.
things.
All
Yeah.
right. So if people want to find out more about you and your work, where do they go?
LadyLawShield.com. That's where you go. I have my website. It's all the ways you can find me.
Okay.
I mean, my social media links are on there. You should certainly sign up for my newsletter list because you might not need me right now, but my goal is so that, like, the same reason that you train like with a firearm all the time so that you can react automatically when you're on the job. I want you to have the legal information to start burying that into your brain so that if something happens to you, you can automatically respond and say, nope, this isn't right. Bridget told me this, and you should say this. And so that you don't let this become a suffering in silence, negatively affecting your mental health. So sign up for the newsletter. They're short, they're weekly, they're helpful. And then, yeah, and if you ever need me, you can book a call with me on my website. All that's right there, ladylawshield.com.
Outstanding. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.